Continuing topic 6 of paper 3, covering futures trading and settlement, we'll now look at paragraph 2.2 on financial requirements of futures exchange participants. Well, the financial requirements is derived from the financial resource rules. However, if there is any discrepancy between the financial resource requirements of the futures exchange rules and the financial resource rules, which come from the SFC, the more stringent requirements will prevail. Futures exchange will notify the SFC when the futures exchange participant fails to meet any financial resource requirements, or if there's any irregularity and there's any potential financial problems with the futures exchange participant. So the futures exchange is keeping an eye open on behalf of the SFC. Remember, the futures exchange participants hold an SFC Type 2 license. Paragraph 2.3, we move on to continuing obligations of the clearing participants. Now, we've considered the continuing obligations of the futures exchange participants earlier. Now, with the clearing participants, they must comply with financial resource rules and the clearinghouse rules, make regular financial returns to the clearinghouse, keep futures exchange participantship in good standing. Remember, the clearing participants must be futures exchange participants firstly. Comply with the SFO at all times, observe position limits set by the clearinghouse and the futures exchange. Now, these position limits we dealt with at the end of topic 5. As with the futures exchange participants, the clearing participants cannot sell, transfer, pledge, or charge their participantship. They must make required deposits to the clearinghouse reserve fund, which we will come to a little later. They must maintain the required technology, the systems, keep all records in relation to each contract for at least 7 years. That goes back to the keeping of record rules. And each clearing participant is assigned gross position limits, net position limits. We don't go into that in too much detail at paper 3. And I wouldn't get bogged down with that, really. I've never seen it examined. Top of page 6.8, financial resource requirements of clearing participants. Well, there is the financial resource rules, yes, or a stipulated amount, whichever is the higher. Well, in both cases, it's the higher amount that we must abide by. The general clearing participants must maintain 20 million Hong Kong dollars, and the standard clearing participants must maintain 5 million Hong Kong dollars with regard to liquid capital. Now, trading rules under paragraph 2.5, all futures trading shall be conducted on the system, the Hong Kong Automated Trading System, and anyone can be banned from HKSI by the Chief Executive of the Futures Exchange. All futures trading must be through the Futures Exchange facilities during trading hours. That's a major distinction from over-the-counter trading, when it's between two counterparties and it can be any time they wish. No, with futures trading must be during the trading hours of the Futures Exchange. Now, no Futures Exchange participant shall knowingly take the opposite side of a client order unless clients given consent in writing and the trade's been bid, offered, report is laid down in the Board of Futures Exchange procedures. That's standard material. It's not examined regularly, but be aware of it. Futures Exchange participant must not bid or offer to confuse other participants. Futures Exchange participant must not disclose information of buy-sell orders in hand and pending for execution to any party except Hong Kong Exchange staff. So you can't let on to other market participants what the pending buy-sell orders are. Block trades, which we're going to cover in a moment. Block trades not executed in the prescribed manner or within the prescribed trading hours will not be considered, I should say, valid trades. So we're being alerted to the fact that there is something called block trades that we're going to have to consider. An error trade, that's where you trade and you've made a mistake, can only be cancelled when 3 conditions are satisfied. Trade takes place on HKSI out with price parameters. Trades notified to the futures exchange within 10 minutes of the trade being made, and parties to the error trade consent to its cancellation. KYC, know your client, as with other activities. Futures participants must know who their ultimate clients are, so they must obtain sufficient detail information on each client, identifying the ultimate beneficiary for each transaction. When the futures exchange participants are unable to supply client identity information to the futures exchange, which is not a good look, you're unable to inform futures exchanges to the identity of your clients, then you may be forced to close out any or all open contracts relating to those clients. Now, the KYC requirements also apply to omnibus accounts. Remember, these are accounts that a firm will put all their client trades through with a participant. Each futures exchange participant must obtain from each client who uses these facilities, uses the omnibus account, names and details of the person who are ultimate beneficial interest in the omnibus account. So the exchange participant cannot rely on the fact that the omnibus account is being operated by XYZ Limited. They must know who XYZ Limited's ultimate clients are under the Know Your Client provisions. And as promised, we're going to look at block trades. Can be examined. What are block trades? They are large buy or sell orders privately negotiated out with public auction market. So you're not putting the buys and sells through HKATs initially. You're trading outside the public auction market. Now, block trades must satisfy a set of criteria. Must be in block trade contracts as designated by the futures exchange, and they must not be below a minimum volume threshold. Now, the thresholds are listed. Do we have to know them? I'm afraid yes, and I'll indicate which ones are often examined. Stock index futures, stock futures, 100 contracts is the minimum volume threshold for block trades. Stock index options, also 100. So anything to do with stock, it's 100. Currency options, and a bit further down, renminbi currency futures. So currency futures and options, 50 contracts. But in the middle there, high bar futures, that's the favorite. So high bar futures, minimum volume threshold, 80 contracts. Please remember that. And then we've got the Treasury bond futures and the metal futures traded on the London Metal Exchange, both 50 contracts. Now, participants cannot aggregate separate orders to build them up to meet the minimum volume threshold. The block trades must be negotiated during trading hours, even though you're not using the system during the negotiations. Nevertheless, the negotiations must be during trading hours. Once a block trade has been negotiated, it must be immediately executed on HKATs via the block trade facility. Now, the price of a block trade must lie within one of the following price or price ranges. Please read through that material. I've never seen it examined. The people that are trading futures find it all very straightforward. So just be aware that there are price ranges for block trades. Further down, the board of the futures exchange, absolute discretion to accept, reject, and execute a price for a block trade. In certain circumstances, a futures exchange participant may need to deposit a special block trade margin. Now, the quantity of block trade taken into account when calculating the traded volume of contracts traded on the futures exchange. And right at the bottom of page 6.9, we're told that block trades are identified in the ticker window of HKATs by the symbols EMP1BR or EMPDBR. Now, many, many years ago, they would examine those symbols. I haven't seen that exam for a long time, but I'd keep that in the back of my mind. Top of page 6.10, futures exchange participants must record block trades through a telephone recording system, keeping the recordings for at least 3 months. Okay, that's a fair amount of material on block trades. Continuing, paragraph 2.8, pre-trade pre-trade risk management system. There is such a thing. I wouldn't get too excited about it. 2.9, position monitoring. Under a MOU signed by SFC and Hong Kong Exchange and Clear Limited, Hong Kong Exchange required to monitor positions or unusual price volume fluctuations. So what is happening here is that the exchanges conduct cross-market surveillance on behalf of the SFC. As is listed, they're looking for large open positions for all futures index option contracts. They're looking for risk concentrations, looking for market activity for the extended sessions. And they're looking at position deltas, which is to do with measuring the amount by which an option price will move for a given change in the underlying instrument. I don't think I'd necessarily get too excited about what the individual areas are that the Hong Kong Exchange surveys, but I would be aware that Hong Kong Exchanges will report to the SFC when they see something either suspicious or large, which takes us to 2.10, contract limits and reportable positions. Now, previously, this was, as you can see, covered in topic 6, but now we have specific SFC rules on contract limit and reportable position, and those are detailed at the end of topic 5. So you should have already covered this, but just in summary, under these rules, no person may hold or control traded futures contracts beyond prescribed limits. And beyond the reportable limits, you must report those positions. Once you hit the prescribed limits, then you've got to stop unless you get authorization from either the exchanges or the SFC. But as I say, there's a lot more material on this at the end of topic 5.